This is week 205 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now that also means that it's day 1438 of martial law in Ukraine, a set of rules that's been tested in the face of the ongoing winter humanitarian crisis. I'm Belokur, reporting to you from Kyiv, and this week we're going to be talking about how a country under attack sets and enforces rules for its civilians, and then adapts those rules as the conditions change. First things first, what is martial law? Well, broadly speaking, it's when a military is given special authority over a country in a time of crisis, like a war, a natural disaster, or civil collapse. Under martial law, civilians are required to answer to the military and to obey new restrictions. Most zombie apocalypse movies have this common imagery of patrolling soldiers and roadblocks around quarantined cities. And that's because it's assumed that if a country was faced with something on par with a zombie virus outbreak, the first step would be to institute martial law and let the military set and enforce the rules. Now, in practice, there isn't a set rulebook that all countries follow. Governments institute martial law under varied circumstances and with a range of conditions, with some countries instituting martial law for a matter of hours, and others holding their citizens trapped in it for decades. Ukraine instituted martial law as soon as Russia launched its full-scale invasion on February 24, 2022, and it's been extended continuously since then, and will continue to be until a sustainable peace deal is secured. And I'll just note quickly that there is no meaningful public pushback to this, and Ukrainians largely agree that cooperating with the military is the best way to counter the immediate threat that Russia poses. Now, in practice, this means that men aged 18 to 60 are not allowed to travel abroad, with some exceptions for those exempt from the draft or some public figures. Elections are postponed indefinitely, public holidays aren't observed, and everyone in the country is subject to new rules and restrictions in public. Namely, no one is allowed to be on the street at night without special permission from the military. The exact hours vary a bit by region, and the only part of Ukraine that doesn't have a curfew is Zakarpattia Oblast in the far west, near the Romanian border. Here in Kyiv, curfew lasts from midnight to 5 a.m., but it's longer in regions closer to the front lines, where it's both more dangerous for civilians to be out, and more necessary for the military to have time to move around without civilians on the street. But in all regions, during curfew, it does not matter if you're on foot, on a bike, or in a car. It doesn't matter if you have a nearby destination or a sympathetic reason. If you're stopped, you can get in trouble for violating the law, and you're almost certainly going to be reprimanded. Now, this means no 24/7 gas stations, no late-night food delivery, no 3 a.m. taxi cabs, and with few exceptions, no late-night clinics or vet offices, no open pharmacy to pick up medicine, no night staff on standby to assist you. For Ukrainians, curfew can be isolating. When the hour strikes, you're just stuck where you are. If you need to do something or obtain something, the most likely answer is that you're just gonna have to wait until curfew is over. And yeah, Russia tends to launch airstrikes at night when people are in their homes, which adds this additional layer of stress and danger. It's always been the case that you can be on the street after curfew if you're heading to a shelter, because it's usually obvious to the authorities that that's where you're going. And that isn't a major security concern because being outside during an air raid requires something of an active choice. Authorities don't have to worry too much if that's the only way someone is breaking curfew. Curfew is one of the parts of life in wartime Ukraine that can seem the strictest and most invasive to outsiders. But to be honest, it's not so hard to get used to. Although it can feel excessive as a safety measure in the far western parts of the country that have only seen a handful of air raids throughout the full-scale invasion, people generally accept it as a net good for maintaining order amid the inherent chaos of war. In fact, you kind of come to like it. It makes hosting parties easier because there's a hard endpoint to throw people out, and when you go abroad, it can actually feel exhausting to stay out past midnight. For better or worse, it completely rewires your brain to calculate and count down time on someone else's schedule. But as Ukraine undergoes a humanitarian crisis amid Russia's relentless assaults on the energy grid, the question of whether the curfew should be relaxed has emerged once again. For many Ukrainians stuck at home with no electricity, heating, or water, the need to go out and seek help has become vital. So this month, President Volodymyr Zelensky encouraged regional authorities to review their curfew restrictions and relax them where possible, to give people flexibility amid the energy crisis. As we've shown in our last couple of videos, points of invincibility are set up around cities like Kyiv, where people can warm up around the clock and use generator power to charge their devices. While the crisis is ongoing, people can leave their homes and come to these points of invincibility during curfew without special permits. Think of it less like a rule change and more like a loosening of restrictions of the kind we saw during the pandemic. One restaurant chain, Musafir, that had once had to move from Russian-occupied Crimea to Kyiv, is now stepping in to help. One of its restaurants is doubling as a point of invincibility during the cold snap, giving Kyiv residents a place to buy hot drinks during curfew. Although staying open through the night wouldn't be so out of the question for a European or American business, it's a sign of just how hard this winter is on Kyiv that city authorities have amended strict, long-standing rules to give people an extra lifeline. My colleague Elena Zashko visited to show you more.
Ми сиділи в квартирі, де було дуже холодно, не було світла. І я така, до речі, Musafir же ж тепер працює вночі. І Федір такий, що, Musafir працює вночі?
В домі немає ні світла, ні тепла, нічого. І не дуже комфортабельні умови для того, щоб працювати. А працювати, якось готуватися до семінарів треба. Ми йшли скільки хвилин? 45, щось таке, 40-45. Але це було не прям погано. Зараз температура більш-менш нормальна на вулиці, а найближчими днями прийде антициклон і буде знову мінус 15, так хоч прогулялися.
Приходять люди, щоб погрітися, підзарядити свій телефон, можливо, комусь не спиться в тривогу. Також у нас працює підвал, тобто мінус перший поверх, там можна, я думаю, більш безпечно сидіти, ніж вдома, наприклад. То приходять попити до нас чаю, з'їсти якогось десертика і попрацювати в цей час. Вночі також є люди, які працюють.
Ми розуміємо, що наразі в нас перебої зі світлом, перебої з опаленням. Так? І керівництво, порадившись, так прийняло рішення, щоб ми, маючи цю змогу, допомагали людям. Так? Тобто, щоб люди могли прийти до нас, якщо в квартирі холодно, наприклад, так? Могли обігрітися, зарядитися, пристрої якісь. Ми працюємо для тих, кому потрібні. Тобто, люди прийшли, нам це буде неважливо, яка це кількість. Ми для себе розраховуємо, допомагати весь цей час, поки ми потрібні. У мене вдома якраз прохолодно, але я така людина, що я дуже люблю холод. Я дуже люблю сильно мінусові температури, тому мені комфортно.
Сьогодні я прям так змерзла, що я думаю, ні, треба йти в Musafir нарешті.
Там вже і газові комфорки не рятували. Так. Після того, як опалення зникло, виживати тільки за рахунок того, що зранку можна прикинутися, включити на кухні газ і трошки підігрітися. В 2 шарах шкарпеток і під 3 одіялами все одно пальців ніг не відчувається.
I know it's been several weeks of talking about this crisis, but we're still in the eye of the storm, and some worry that we still haven't seen the peak. Large-scale air raids battered Ukraine almost every night this week, with 80% of the country facing emergency power cuts after a particularly bad strike last Saturday. And thousands in Kyiv are entering another week with little to no electricity. The capital is divided by the Dnipro River. I'm currently recording this on the right bank, and the left bank has seen some of the most severe effects of the blackouts. We visited the other side of the river to see how people there are coping.
В садочку наразі плюс 13 градусів. Обігрівачі вони не вмикають, бо генератор у них не тягне. Гріємося газовою плитою, гріємо воду в бутилки, тому що маленька дитина, холодно. Трохи вже временами болить голова від нього. Цвітуть откоси, течуть вікна, мокрі стіни. Все супер, клас. Ліжко холодне. В принципі, все холодне. В ванну заходиш, то в ванні так аж прям зябко. Щоб помитися, то думаєш, блін. Це зараз треба буде все знімати, тут так холодно. Я вже більш склоняюсь до того, що, мабуть, у нас вже до кінця зими отоплення не буде. Просто хочеться прийти додому і переодіватися, і не думати, з якою скоростю тобі переодіватися, щоб не замерзнути. І не боятися висунути ногу з-під одіяла, щоб вона не одмерзла.
П'яту добу немає світла, опалення теж немає. Тому ми приходимо сюди от, погрітися, зарядитися. З минулої зими нормально було, це така перша. Ну, я думаю, у всіх. Біля нас один приліт був, от, це ж поряд будинок, 3 дні тому, 3 ночі тому. Було, звісно, дуже страшно. Шахет завис там на проводах і розірвався. В нас в домі з обох сторін вибило шибки.
Unusual thing for anyone's kitchen, but usual for the ones in Kyiv are these bricks, and you see 3 more in the furnace. As soon as you turn off the gas, the apartment cools down very, very quickly. But with these bricks, they kind of store some heat in it. Before we lost central heating, I was like, as many residents of Kyiv, very discomforted by the loss of electricity. I thought like, okay, if I have that, everything will be cool. But then after these latest big attacks when we lost central heating, I actually realized that water and heating is the most important things. In my apartment, the temperature was in my coldest room like about 9 or 10 degrees. Some people in other like neighboring apartments, they had 0 or 5 degrees. So like basically your apartment becomes uninhabitable and there is really no way around it. Like burning gas, as I'm doing right now, it's barely enough to keep this one room, the kitchen, warm. And the negative side effect of it is it produces a lot of humidity, and you obviously breathe that, it spreads mold. So you've probably seen things like this when you with different shoes or different goods that you have bought. This one absorbs moisture. And this is basically just lots and lots of it. Candles here are also I read somewhere that they help to absorb moisture. So we have almost 14 degrees right now. Yesterday I think humidity was here like 85% and the temperature was about 9 or 10 degrees.
Людина така істота, що вона до всього приспосаблюється, як оказалося, що не так страшні ті відключення вже.
Що в житті мотивують, діти мотивують. Для них треба жити, треба якісь виходи шукати. Ну і надія на перемогу, на те, що на швидку перемогу, що все буде гаразд.
When this disaster came, I was pleasantly surprised how many people organized together. How we actually, like, a community was created. Like, if Russians expect me, like, oh no, we're gonna say that please take Donetsk and Luhansk and Crimea and Kherson, and because I'm called at apartment, no.
It feels like we're about a decade into 2026. We've had power outages, peace talks, and a Russian army that will not stop advancing. The next 11 months aren't likely to be any calmer, and if anything, we might be looking back on these days nostalgically. But no matter what, the Kyiv Independent will be here on the ground as the world's eyewitness source on all things Ukraine, and it's entirely made possible by viewers and readers like you. If you'd like to join our growing but tight-knit community and support our work for as little as a few dollars a month, there will be a link to our membership page in the description below. Thank you as well to everyone who donates in the comment section. Your contributions go directly towards funding our work. Everyone in Ukraine has a somewhat personal relationship to curfew. It's a source of stability, frustration, and absurdity. We took to the streets of Kyiv to ask people how they're handling winter nights and whether the relaxed rules are helping.
Якщо чесно, я не знаю, але мені здається, що так. Ну, якщо вони є, то, мабуть, ж все-таки це має якийсь сенс.
Я чула лише про службу саме сервіси таксі. Я вважаю, це дуже доцільно, тому що особливо в моменти обстрілів і всього іншого, інколи ти розумієш, що в тебе в районі там немає суперкласних безпекових об'єктів, і ти можеш там поїхати до когось із друзів. Це набагато зручніше і адекватніше, тому я плюсую цим змінам.
Комендантська година з 12 до 5. Да? Я в цей період я не буваю на вулиці. Через те, то мене, як для мене, то мені все рівно, хай буде так. Я не знаю, може людині десь треба поїхати в цей час. І я вам скажу, а що воно дає, оця комендантська година? Ну що вона для людей дає? Просто щоб люди не передвигалися вночі. І все.
Я чув, да, вони давно вже пункти незламності, вони ще і в минулому році були, да. Але ж ми їми не користувались ніколи. У мене до сьогоднішнього дня є свій пункт незламності, це в селі. Я з нею не стикався з комендантською годиною. Вона з 12 до 5, я в цей час завжди сплю. Просто завжди сплю і все.
Curfew is also very valuable because it helps keep the civil order and to be sure that citizens are safe. This change is very valuable because it helps people like to find the warm place because not every family got a warm place at their homes.
As I said earlier, and as demonstrated by our interview subjects, most Ukrainians obey the rules of martial law with little to no internal or external conflict. People see it as an investment in the greater good and trust that the military is the best force to know how to deter Russia's invasion. I'd like to note that this compliance is not an inherently Ukrainian trait. Ukraine certainly was not a leader in pandemic lockdowns or prevention protocols. Rather, the widespread participation in the rules of martial law, even in times of crisis, speak to the degree to which Ukrainians understand Russia as an immediate existential threat that we all need to act against together. Even as temperatures plummet and everyday life becomes unthinkably difficult for so many people, Ukraine knows that the real challenge is staying united, staying strong, and staying alive against the invaders' best efforts. And although this is the hardest winter Russia's given Ukraine yet, it's clear that Ukrainians aren't ready to give up yet.
Our member question this week is once again from Kev H. The EU is building a drone wall along the Russian border because it's impossible to deploy enough air defense equipment to protect an entire country. Are there any plans to do the same in Ukraine? I think most of the drones come from the east and south. It's possible in theory, logistics notwithstanding. I hate to say it, but the thinking here actually should be completely the other way around. Ukraine is defending from Russian drones using cheap but also very highly advanced and innovative methods every single day, and it is the EU and Europe that is completely unprepared for this kind of threat. So the EU can help fund and support these anti-drone defense projects, but the actual know-how is coming from Ukraine, defending its own border and its own front line from these same threats. And as we saw from the drone incursion into Poland, it is Europe that needs the drone wall, because so far, at the moment, they really have nothing to protect, even against a small drone incursion like the one we saw.
That's all for this week. We'll be back next Sunday with more news from Ukraine. If you appreciated this video, please consider becoming a member of the Kyiv Independent community. It's truly thanks to viewers like you that we can do this work, and we are so grateful for your support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.